My father blamed my sister for my mother's death, and now that she calls me daddy, he regrets. I, 24M, am the older brother to my little sibling, 5F. I was always the one who had to take care of my sister. For the sake of privacy, I'll call her Belle. For some background, my parents had me as teenagers. They were 15 and 16 at the time, and even as a kid, I could always feel that they regretted having me. After I was born, both my mother and father were practically disowned by their family. My mother had to drop out of high school to take care of me, while my father worked 2 jobs just to provide, and even then they couldn't afford a home. They lived with my mother's older sister until I was 9, and my father got his GED and managed to get a better job and move us out. Despite the fact our living situation was better, it was clear to me that they believed their lives were ruined because of me. Whenever I misbehaved like any normal child, they'd use the fact that they gave up their lives for me, and I still had the audacity to behave like this. And even when I never misbehaved, they never treated me with much love. I barely got to get new clothing. They'd get my clothes from Goodwill and practically refused to get me anything nice unless they had 2 birthdays, parties, meeting friends, and their wedding. My birthdays were always celebrated with the bare minimum. They'd get me a cupcake and a single gift, nothing that I wanted. Despite everything, I was still a child who just wanted their love, but as I grew older, I began to accept I wouldn't get it and made peace with that. I guess somewhere along the line, when my parents realized I gave up on them, as throughout my teen years they, mainly my mother, began to treat me better. But at that point, I wasn't the child who begged for their love anymore. I never received the love of my parents, and I wasn't asking for it anymore. Although I can't say I kept hating them, in fact my feeling began to feel neutral towards them. In my eyes we were practically strangers. I never got to know them truly, as they raised me with the bare minimum and never had any real conversations with me and never spent any quality time with me. They also knew nothing about me, so them suddenly trying to play parents with me was awkward to say the least. When I was 18, my mother got pregnant, and I guess that was when they gave up on trying to fix things with me, as they could have a new child to start over with. They didn't treat me poorly again, but instead it felt like we were strangers living in the same home. When I turned 19, my mother gave birth to a girl, but due to some complications she didn't end up surviving. This crushed my father. Not only did he begin to resent me for not being as sad as he was over her death, she was barely a mother to me, so there wasn't much to be sad over, but he also blamed his daughter for killing his wife. He was never home after the incident, and I was left taking care of my sister. I ended up having to take a break from college after the time I came home from my classes to my sister screaming with hunger in an unchanged diaper while my father was out drinking. I took care of Belle full time and called out my father multiple times, but he always got angry and ended the convo with him saying I could always leave Belle at the fire station. I eventually gave up on forcing him to be a father. Despite everything, I truly loved Belle. She was the sweetest and cutest kid. She was almost always smiley and surprisingly slept through the night. Once she was old enough, I enrolled her in daycare and continued my education while working night shifts. I always made sure to leave a good portion of afternoons empty so I could spend time with her. She always knew who her actual father was, and as she grew older she began to try and spend time with him, I guess, as she began to follow him around the house. Of course that quickly ended after he blew up on her and she began to fear him. I realized she saw me as a parental figure despite the fact she knew I was her brother. When she was old enough for preschool, I found out she was telling people I was her father. I never mentioned it to her and just let it be until she gave her Father's Day card she made in preschool to me. I then told her if she wanted she could call me Dad, and since then she's been calling me Daddy. My father ended up getting a girlfriend and began to change himself as he stopped drinking, got a better job, and even began to take over on a majority of the bills other than the portion I agreed to pay to stay living here. He never really tried being a father to Belle. He did begin to eat breakfast with us, but that breakfast was spent in silence other than me and Belle talking. Fast forward to a few months ago on Belle's birthday, I had planned a party for her and invited her preschool class. My father ended up attending as I guess his girlfriend thought it would be a good time to meet his daughter, as she was the one who looked excited to be here. Anyways, while she was opening gifts, I surprised her with one of those kids' electric cars. She screamed and hugged me, yelling how she loved me and called me Daddy. After the party and after Belle was fast asleep, my father asked me what the hell happened. I was confused till he yelled asking why his daughter was calling me Daddy. I asked him if he seriously didn't know why and told him that I was the one who raised her. I bought her everything. I celebrated her firsts. I was the one who didn't abandon her. He was quiet and went to bed. Since then he's tried to play father and talk to her, but he was a stranger to her. She was a sweet girl, so she entertained my father's conversation, but he could tell how awkward she felt, and it was clear it hurt him. Despite how selfish it is, I don't want their relationship to get better. After all, just as she saw me as her dad, I saw her as my daughter. I graduated college and I'm looking for a better job so I can move Belle and I into our own home. I may be a bad person for enjoying my father's misery and regret realizing he ruined his chances in having a relationship with his daughter, but I'll never be as bad as him. Edit. Thank you guys for all the support and advice. As people suggested, I might be deleting this post soon to avoid any chance of my father finding out before I'm ready for the custody battle. I'll use the advice you guys gave me. I know it was risky posting it here as people might find out, but I never had anyone to talk to about all of this before, so it was nice to be able to let everything out for the first time. My sister ruined my life because our parents favor me over her. English is not my first language and I'm a wreck, so sorry if some things don't make sense. I, 25F, have always been in competition with my sister, 27F, since I can remember. I was a baby born after a miscarriage our mom had, so my parents were very happy and shifted their attention away from my sister and onto me. I want to clarify that I never took joy in this, and I knew that I was favored over my sister due to unfair circumstances. I tried to connect with her growing up because I considered her a really cool person, but she always seemed uninterested, which only made my parents chew her out for hurting my feelings. Obviously, that only caused her to hate me more. When I turned 15, I completely stopped engaging with her. My parents didn't push for us to be friends either and kept their attention on me, which has always bugged me because who wants to be coddled and surveillanced 24/7? Anyway, things went alright for me and I eventually got myself into a good college, and my parents offered to pay for everything: food, rent, school supplies, etc., since I wanted to move out of their house. I wanted to be independent, so I declined, but when my sister heard of this, she was understandably mad, as they had refused to pay for anything and told her she needed to learn responsibility by paying for her own things. She blew up at my parents, but mostly at me for stealing away the attention of our parents her entire life and making her miserable. I tried to explain that I agreed that they were bad parents and that she deserved better, but she just told me to shut my whore mouth and that she didn't need my sympathy. My parents forced her to apologize and threatened to cut contact if she didn't. I agree that she was harsh, but I understand how frustrated she must have felt her whole life, so I don't hold it against her. Since she didn't have much of a support system other than them, she sent me a super long apology over text and tried to mend things. Though it was obviously she only did it just because she was forced to. During the first few months of college, I ended up meeting a guy named John, 26M, and we started dating shortly after. Everything just clicked and it seemed like he knew my every thought. At my 20th birthday party, I introduced him to my family and everything seemed to go well. I kept my family and John separate because my parents were always super nosy and my sister seemed extremely judgmental when I would bring company. This time around she was super friendly though. Looking back, my sister was definitely a little too touchy with him, but I chalked that up to her just wanting to overcompensate to mend our relationship further. After I graduated, John ended up proposing and I said yes, as I was head over heels in love. We decided on having a wedding once we had secured good paying jobs and things seems to be perfect between us. Flash forward to 3 weeks ago and I got the most gut-wrenching message of my life. It was from my sister telling me that she was pregnant and it was John's. In addition to that, she sent screenshots of messages and explicit images between the two. They professed their love for each other multiple times and John said that my sister was the best he'd ever had in his life, despite him saying the same to me. It had been going on for majority of the years we'd been together. To say I sobbed my eyes out would be an insulting understatement. I asked her how she could do this to me and she replied, "Now you know how it feels to get your whole life ripped away from you. He loves me more and I'll make sure he leaves your sorry ass for me and our baby. Go cry to our parents and see if I care." And then blocked me before I could respond. I screenshot a lot of it before she did. The bastard I used to call my fiancé came home hours later from work and saw me crying. He begged to know what was wrong and tried to comfort me, but I blew up at him and kicked him out. It's my apartment that we share. He admitted to the affair over text and said he loved me but loved my sister too and had to be there for his child, so the engagement is off. His brother came and took all his stuff, and he hasn't even given me an apology for any of this. I've been crying for basically a month straight, and all I want to do is beat the living crap out of my sister, but I know I would go to jail, especially since she's pregnant. I used to look up to her so much, and I thought that things were finally looking up, but then she decided to backstab me, and for what? Mommy and Daddy's love that I never wanted in the first place? I barely even like my parents either because of their behavior, but I'm the villain? For fuck's sake, you'd think an almost 30-year-old woman would seek therapy or talk to me directly about her resentment, but no, she had to sabotage my life for the sake of hers being shit. I can't even feel any sympathy for her anymore, and I just want to go away forever. I've had extremely alarming thoughts, but I've just resorted to locking myself in my room all day since I work remotely, and it's calmed down in the last few days. My sister unblocks me occasionally to keep rubbing it in my face that he chose her over me, sending picture of them together and her baby bump. I've already blocked her to make sure she leaves me alone. She's a grown woman, for God's sake, gloating like child. If he's willing to cheat on me for so long, I feel incredibly bad for their baby, but definitely not for her. I haven't told my parents yet, and I'm unsure how to even go about it. They'd 100% take my side, but they aren't good people, so I don't want their shitty support. I haven't told my friends, and I don't have a therapist. I want to tell someone, but this is so incredibly humiliating that I can't bring myself to do much but cry and drown myself in work. I saw myself growing old with him and having my sister as a bridesmaid, like I really thought we'd grown past our issues, but now they're both together and left me to fend for myself. Again, this is so goddamn humiliating, but I need to talk to someone.